Welcome back for the final installment of the third book in the Animorphs series, Animorphs number 3, The Encounter. Let me just find my place. Okay. The Yeerks presumably have some form of mothership in orbit around the planet Earth, probably cloaked, but they are dependent on planet Earth for resources like breathable air and clean, fresh drinking water, apparently. They have a tanker truck that makes regular runs between the coast and the mountains in whatever state the Animorphs live in. And they are supplying air and water to the mothership, they believe. So they're trying to infiltrate the tanker truck ship. The plan was to hide in a cave in the mountain, hide in a cave near the mountain lake where the ship has been spotted collecting water most recently, and get sucked up by its pipes in the form of fish and get aboard the ship. They're currently cowering in the cave, but now Visser 3 is on the scene. So that's just, complicates matters. Yeah. Chapter 21. What is he doing here? Cassie asked in a low, frightened whisper. I guess he just came to oversee this trip. Maybe it was because they let that guy get away. He's here to kick butt on his boys, Marco said, trying to sound tough. They screwed up, and now he's here to make sure they don't do it again. It doesn't really matter why he's here, I pointed out. He's here. And there are extra Hork-Bajir, and the whole crowd is way nervous. One of the Hork-Bajir draconed a deer that just happened to be walking by. A deer? Cassie cried. Those stupid jerks. Deer never hurt anyone. What state do they live in where deer never hurt anyone? The plan was for you to sneak down to the water, morph as soon as you got there, and head out for the ship's water intake pipe, I reminded them. It was always a dangerous plan, but now it's impossible. 4 of you walking down to the water, then morphing? That's not going to happen. Not as alert as these guys are now. Not with Visser 3 hanging around, Marco agreed. I disagree. It was Rachel. I think we should try this. Look, if we pull this off, if we manage to get inside that ship and disable the cloaking device while they're over the city, this whole thing will be over. Jake jumped in to support her. We've always said if there was just some way to show the world what was happening, well, this is that way. This would be way too big for the controllers to cover up. I don't care who they are. Even if the mayor and the governor and the entire police force were controllers, they couldn't cover up something like this. Jake, you're not listening. I'm telling you. There is no way you 4 can cruise down to the lake. You'll be dead before you take 5 steps. For a while, no one spoke. It was Cassie who finally broke the silence. There may be a way, she said. See, a fish can survive out of water for a couple of minutes, and the fish we're morphing is small. She looked at me. Small enough for a red-tailed hawk to carry. Well, that idea got everyone's attention, I can tell you. Excuse me? Marco shrilled. Are you saying you want me to not just morph into a fish, but to morph into a fish out of water and then be carried through the air by a bird? Cassie bit her lip. I'm just saying it could work. It would work, Jake said. He and Rachel exchanged a slightly insane look that said, okay, let's try it. No way, I said. You guys are crazy. No offense, but this just raises the danger level way beyond what it was to start with. I know it's dangerous, Jake said, but we may never get a chance this good. Marco whined. I argued, but in the end, it was 3 against 2. Besides, Jake was right. We had a chance to seriously mess up the Yerks. I have watched Marco morph into a gorilla, Rachel become an elephant. Sorry. I have watched Marco morph into a gorilla, Rachel become an elephant and a shrew and a cat, Cassie become a horse, and Jake become a tiger and a flea. Man, that one was weird. But this was the first time anyone had tried morphing into an animal that lived in water. Cassie insisted on going first. It was my idea, she pointed out. She did not point out that she was also the best morpher. If you feel like you're suffocating, you have to back out of the morph, Jake told her. He took her hand. Are you listening to me? You have to back out if it gets bad. You have to back out if it gets bad. You can't pass out halfway into a morph. Cassie smiled. I will. Don't worry about me. She closed her eyes and began to concentrate. I've told you that Cassie is always the best at controlling a morph. She has an almost artistic talent where she can make it look all kinds of cool and not so gross. But not this time. As I watched, her hair disappeared completely. Her skin began to harden, like it was coated with varnish or something, like she had been dipped into clear plastic. Her eyes swung around to the sides of her head. Her face bulged out into a huge mouth that gaped and seemed to be blowing invisible bubbles. As this happened, she was shrinking, but not fast enough. I could still see every nightmare change in her body. The way her legs shriveled up, smaller and smaller, till her legless body fell to the ground. From her lower back, her body stretched out, elongated. Ooh, Rachel cried. A tail had just suddenly splurted from Cassie's behind, a fish tail. Now her varnish-looking skin cracked and split into a million scales. Her ears were gone, her arms were shriveling. She was no more than 2 feet long, lying helpless, a monster, on the floor of the cave. So far, I'm fine, she said, but her thought speech was shaky. Still breathing with my lungs. But at that moment, 2 slits appeared in her neck. Gills. Ah! She cried. Cassie, pull out of it. Ah! She cried. Cassie, pull out of it, Jake cried in an urgent whisper. No, almost done. Tobias? I'm ready, I said grimly. She was tiny now, less than a foot long. All that was left of her human body were 2 very tiny doll hands. They'd made little fins. Cassie flopped wildly. Her mouth gasped silently. Go, Jake said. I closed careful talons around Cassie's squirming fish body. Aimed for the small sliver of sky that I could see through the cave's opening, and flapped my powerful wings. I burst out of the cave into fresh air. Are you okay, Cassie? Fish mine, panicky, water now! Hang in there. You've been through this before. You know how it is when you first go into a morph. You have to get control of the fish's instincts. Water! Water! I can't breathe. I was about 10 feet up, racing for the water's edge. Suddenly, below me, a hork-bajir. He looked up and saw me, a bird with a fish in his talons. I doubted the hork-bajir would realize that redtails don't catch fish. At least, I hoped he wouldn't. I swooped down over the water. The huge Yerk ship was just lowering its intake pipes into the water. I dropped behind a stand of trees that hugged the shoreline. Get ready, I warned Cassie. I let her go like one of those World War II planes dropping its torpedo. She hit the water with a small splash. Are you all right? No answer. Cassie, are you all right? Yeah, she said at last. I'm here. Are you dealing with the fish okay? Again, no answer. Then, whoa, cool, I'm underwater. I relaxed. Yes, you sure are underwater, I said with a laugh. I was scared, she admitted. I know this sounds crazy, but I just kept seeing myself fried with a wedge of lemon and some tartar sauce. Chapter 22. Jake was next. He morphed, and I flew him over the heads of the two patrolling park rangers, who did not even seem to notice me. Then came Marco. When I exited the cave with him, I practically ran into a big Hork-Bajir. He didn't take any notice of me either. Cassie's plan was working. Even with all the controllers on maximum alert, it never occurred to them that their enemy might be a bird with a fish in its talons. Back in the cave, it was just Rachel. So far, so good, I said. Yeah, I guess so. Are you nervous? I'd have to be crazy not to be nervous. Oh well, here goes. She started to morph. I'd seen three others do it now, so it wasn't a surprise to me. But it was still horrifying to watch a friend, someone you cared about, twist and deform and mutate before your eyes. I don't think any of us will ever get used to morphing. Maybe the Andalites are used to it. I don't know. But I'll bet it creeps them out too, when they have to change. I looked away as Rachel began to get strange and hideous. She was almost completely a fish when it happened. Crash! Crash! Someone was forcing their way through the bushes at the mouth of the cave. Hafragleith there! A Hork-Bajir. Yes, I see it, a human voice said grumpily. You know, these human bodies aren't blind. Just because you're in a Hork-Bajir, don't get delusions. Use those blades of yours to hack some of these thorns out of the way. I heard a sound like fast machetes, slicing away the vines and the thorns. Better not find anything in here, the human controller said. The Visser will do to you what was done to that poor fool yesterday who let the human escape. I looked at Rachel. It was too late for her to morph back. What's going on? She asked. Yerks, a human controller and a Hork-Bajir controller, right outside the cave. Go in for Goth for puny body. Oh. This was your sector to check. You didn't even notice this cave. Keep getting on my nerves and I'll tell him. He go first you and eat your little ha. Suddenly, a human head appeared, followed by shoulders. He was wearing a park ranger's outfit. We have to make a break for it, I told Rachel. Here they come. Yeah, there's a cave in here, all right. There's some kind of a bird. I grabbed Rachel, now fully in fish morph, but the human controller blocked the narrow entrance. Well, I thought, it worked with a helicopter. With a rush of my wings, I flew right at his face. What the? He fell back, beating at the air. I scraped past him. The Hork-Bajir slashed at the air with one of his wrist blades. He shaved an inch off my tail. But I was in the air now, and moving faster. Only, it was hard with Rachel. The weight of a fish is more than a red tail can carry easily, and I had already carried 3. I was tired. Fortunately, I was also very scared. Fear can make you strong sometimes. A Dracon beam sizzled through the air above me. Unfortunately, the Hork-Bajir who had fired. Unfortunately, pardon me, my brain was placing some of those commas in places where the commas were not. Unfortunately for the Hork-Bajir who had fired, the Dracon beam did not stop when it buzzed by me. No, the Dracon beam hit the underside. It hit the underside of the vast truck ship. A small, neat, round hole appeared in the bottom of the ship. It was too small to amount to anything. But suddenly, the Hork-Bajir lost his interest in me. Fool, the human controller cried. Visser 3 will have your head for dinner. While they were busy panicking, I dropped Rachel into the water with the others. Good work, Tobias, Jake said. Be careful up there, my friend. You too, I said. Good luck, you guys. I could just barely see them, a small school of fish in the shallows. They swam off and disappeared into deeper water. As I've told you, there are limits to how far thought speech can reach. We don't really know what those limits are, but I wanted to stay as close to them as I dared, in case they needed me. Not that there was much that I could do to help someone underwater. I didn't want to stay right over them. I figured that would look suspicious to anyone on shore. It was hard to figure out what to do. The monstrous bulk of the truck ship was overhead, leaving only a few feet open above the surface of the water. I decided I had to chance it. I flew under the ship, skimming the dappled water below and practically scraping the metal belly of the ship above me. It was a very difficult flight. I had to stay almost totally level. I couldn't rise or fall by more than a couple of feet. You guys still okay? Tobias? I can't believe you can still thought speak with that whole ship between us, Rachel said. I guess I could have told her the truth, that I was within a few feet of them. But then Jake would have just gotten all mad and told me not to take stupid risks. I figured that between the time it had taken through the entire morphine process and carrying them one at a time to the water, plus now the time spent swimming out to the big intake pipe, Cassie had been in morph for just over half an hour. Jake had 10 minutes more, then Marco, then Rachel. What are you guys doing now? I asked. We're looking at the bottom of this intake pipe. There's tremendous suction, Rachel reported. Sorry, I'm just remembering the fish pipe video that Emma showed us a couple of weeks ago. I had almost forgotten how relevant that was going to be. I'll go first and take a look around. See what's what, Jake announced. Here goes. Whoa! Man, woo! Yeah! Jake? Jake, are you okay? Cassie cried. Oh yeah, what a rush. They should have a water slide like that at the gardens. It's like being sucked up a straw by a giant. Cool, Rachel said. I'm next. No, let me look around first, Jake said. I seem to be in some kind of tank. It's not very deep. At least not yet. It's filling up. With these lame fish eyes, I can't see beyond the surface of the water very well, but I think up in the ceiling there's an opening, like a grate or something. Up on the ceiling? How are we going to get there? Marco asked. Well, I think if they fill this whole tank, we'll be near the top eventually. We should be able to morph to human, let ourselves out, then morph into something more dangerous than our human bodies. Excuse me? Marco said. But does anyone else ever stop to realize that some of the things we talk about doing are totally insane? What? Turning into fish so we can be carried by a hawk and let ourselves be sucked up the pipe of an alien spaceship so that we can then turn into tigers and gorillas and whatever and overpower the creepy aliens? Rachel said. Is that what you mean by insane? Yeah, that's it exactly. Yep, Rachel said. It is insane. Well, okay, Marco said. Yeah, as long as we all know we're nuts. Let's do it. Chapter 23. There was nothing for me to do but wait. Wait. Wait while the water level inside the ship rose and carried my friends toward the top of the chamber, up to where the grate was. I could not maintain my level flight beneath the ship any longer. I said goodbye to my friends and zoomed out the far side. The open air was a blessing. I soared high on a nice thermal pattern created by the ship itself. I rose high up and over the top of the ship. The park rangers were all around on the ground. The helicopters and two of the bug fighters were still parked on the ground in the little clearing. The blade ship was there too. Two other bug fighters continued zipping around at treetop level. While I watched, they brought the Hork-Bajir, who had carelessly fired off the Drakon beam. They dragged him before Visser 3. We'd gotten so we thought of Hork-Bajir as these totally fearless, deadly monsters, but this Hork-Bajir was not looking very brave. He collapsed on the ground before Visser 3. I almost felt sorry for him. It was one of the terrible things about our battle against the Yeerks. See, our enemy was just the Yeerk slug that lived in the heads of controllers. That Hork-Bajir may have been made a controller totally against his will. He had lost his freedom to the Yeerk in his head. Now he was about to lose his life for something that he had no real control over. I couldn't hear what was happening down on the ground, but I could see. My hawk's eyes could see far too well. I turned away. I won't tell you what was happening to the Hork-Bajir. That memory will be my own private nightmare. But when next I looked, the Hork-Bajir was gone. Sorry. But when next I looked, the Hork-Bajir was gone, and in his place was a sudden rush of other Hork-Bajir and taxons and humans, all surrounding Visser 3. The Visser looked angry. He was pointing at the sky. Within a few seconds, the helicopters were lifting off. The two bug fighters powered up and took off. I had a very bad feeling that I knew what had happened. The doomed Hork-Bajir had told Visser 3 about the bird he had fired at. And some other controller had probably said, "Oh yeah, I saw a bird acting suspiciously too." And someone had no doubt said, "Hey, wasn't it a bird that distracted the Hork-Bajir yesterday and let that human get away?" Visser 3 had put two and two together. An animal acting unlike an animal meant just one thing to him: Andalites in a morph. I guess I should have been flattered that Visser 3 believed we Animorphs were true Andalite warriors, but it didn't make a difference whether he thought I was an Andalite or a human. He was sending his creatures into the sky, looking for a bird that was no bird. Me. A bug fighter skimmed over the trees. Sorry. Thank you for that idea, Matthew. Yeah. A bug fighter skimmed over the trees. Its twin Drakon beams fired again and again in short, sharp spears of burning light. My heart was in my throat. They were killing every bird they saw. The hawk. This was her territory. But then, behind me, a helicopter. A Drakon beam, a near miss. I couldn't get away. Between the bug fighters and the helicopters, they were too numerous and too fast. But there was one place no one was going to risk firing a Dracon beam, not after what Visser 3 had just done to the careless Hork-Bajir. I let go of the air beneath my wings and dropped, down, 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 toward the vast truck ship spread below me like a steel meadow. In an instant, they were all on me, but the angles were wrong. I was too close to the ship. They couldn't fire. I landed on top of the hovering ship. I planted my talons on the hard, cold metal surface. It stretched in every direction around me. The surface curved down and away from me, so that I couldn't even see the edges. It was as if I were standing all alone on a metal moon. Pardon me, my telephone is ringing. Over my head hovered helicopters and bug fighters. I could see human and Hork-Bajir and Taxon eyes all focused on me. I knew the look in their eyes, the look of a predator, and me, their prey. Chapter 24. It was not looking good for me. If I tried to fly off that ship, I would be draconed 10 different ways before I could get away. It was an eerie scene. I stood on the vast metal plane while over my head they hovered, a swarm of deadly predators. Then things got worse, a lot worse. It floated up into my vision like a dark moon, the blade ship of Visser 3. It hovered just a few hundred feet up. I felt my last reserves of courage beginning to fail. Tobias, old buddy, I said to myself, you are not going to get out of this alive. But they just all hovered there. Slowly, I began to realize the truth. They didn't know what to do about me. They couldn't shoot me without hitting the ship. And a light. The voice in my head made me reel. I almost took wing out of sheer fright. He had never spoken directly to me before. It was a voice of such absolute power, such utter confidence. The mere silent sound of it in your head makes you want to obey, makes you quiver and fear. It is the voice of dread, the voice of destruction. Andalite, fool! Do you think I don't know what you are? A true bird would fly away. Say nothing, I ordered myself. Nothing. If I tried to reply, he might know me for a human. I would not tell him that. I would not give him anything. I closed my mind, but I could not shut out that dark voice. Give yourself up, Andalite. I will give you a quick and painless death, as soon as you tell me where the others are. I had seen what Visser 3 did to the Hork-Bajir who displeased him. The memory was fresh in my mind. Have it your way, Andalite. I am patient. I can wait here for as long as it takes. And then you will die. Quickly, by Dracon beam. Or, perhaps, if we can snare you, more slowly, here in my blade ship. Much more slowly. Just then, I heard another voice in my head. A very different voice. It was faint, as if it were far away. Tobias? Tobias, can you hear me? Rachel. Yes, I can hear you. Tobias, we're trapped. Sorry. Tobias, we're trapped. The tank is full, but the grate won't open. Cassie and Jake have already morphed back to human, but they can't get it open. We're trapped in here. Rachel, what can I do? We can't get out, Rachel cried. Listen to me, Tobias. We're trapped. There is no way out. This ship will take off soon. This ship will take off soon. They'll find us when they get to the mothership and unload the water. Tobias, we don't want to be taken alive. My blood ran cold. My head was whirling. What are you talking about? Listen, Tobias, we can't be taken alive. Do you understand? If there's anything you can do, anything. Rachel, what can I do? I can't get you out of there. I know, Rachel said. We all know. But if there's some way to if the ship could be destroyed, we know it's probably not possible. If there was some way. No. I have to morph to human. I have to morph to human now. We'll tread water here. We have to be ready. We have to be ready for when we get to the mothership. Then we'll morph into other animals and go down fighting. This can't be happening, I cried. This can't be happening. I guess Marco was right all along, Rachel said sadly. I guess it always was insane to think we could fight the Yerks. Rachel, I never told you. You didn't have to, Tobias, she said. I knew. I knew. Goodbye. She fell silent. In my mind, I could picture her regaining her human shape, treading water with the others, unable to escape, expecting only the worst, praying that I might find a way to make their end swift, as Visser 3 had offered to make mine. We had lost. The Yerks had won, finally, and when we were gone, the last hope of the human race would die. Above me, the blade ship waited like a hawk watching a rabbit, ready to swoop down and finish me. Only I wasn't a rabbit. Visser 3 was a predator? Well, so was I. And I no longer had anything to be afraid of. If my friends were to die in the mothership, I would be lost and alone in a world where I belonged nowhere. I had nothing more to lose. Just then, I saw something that should have terrified me. Across the metal plane of the ship, they crawled and slithered toward me. All around me, a dozen of them, giant worms, centipedes with a hunger for living flesh, taxons. They had come from the inside of the ship on Visser 3's orders. If I stayed put, they would catch me. If I flew, the hovering Yerk ships would fry me. The taxons closed their circle around me. It looks as if you've run out of time, Visser 3 said in my head. He laughed, and it was not a nice laugh. Ah, Visser 3, you ruthless predator, I thought. Very clever. You have me trapped like a rabbit. But a trapped rabbit is one thing, and a trapped hawk, a hawk with the mind of a human being, is a whole different matter. The nearest taxon leveled a handheld Dracon beam at me. He watched me with two of the circle of red globs they have for eyes. I pushed off with my feet. I beat the air with my wings. I flew straight for those red jello eyes. He raised one of his feeble forearms to shield his eyes. The wrong move. I trimmed a shade right, raked my talons forward, and struck like I was hitting a mouse in a field. My talons closed around the Dracon beam. The taxon's weak grip was no match for my speed. The Dracon beam tore loose from his grip. Get him! Visser 3 cried. I could practically see the blade chip rock from the force of his rage. But I did not take to the air. I flew fast, but hugged the surface of the ship's metal curve. They could not hit me without hitting their precious ship. I knew just where I wanted to go. Wingtips actually hitting the ship on each downstroke. Wingtips actually hitting the ship on each downstroke, I raced toward the ship's bridge, toward the tiny windows where I had seen the Taxon crew. I could not save my friends, perhaps, but I could try to grant Rachel's last wish. I could try to bring this ship down, even if it meant the end of my friends. Chapter 25. Take off! Move! Mr. 3 commanded the crew of the truck ship. Almost immediately, the huge thing began to move forward, very slowly at first, but as it moved, it created a headwind. The bridge was moving away from me. The ship was rising as it went. 100 feet up now. 200. Ha! Not so easy, Andalite. Right then, I had a powerful urge to shock the evil monster and say, "Guess what, creep? Not an Andalite at all. Name's Tobias." But I wasn't ready to start bragging. The truth was, it was looking bad. The ship was slowly picking up speed. I flapped harder, harder. I gained again, but it was painfully slow. I was wearing out. The Dracon beam weighed me down. The headwind was building. Ahead of me, just a few feet away, I saw the bulge of the bridge. I gained a foot. Another. Another. I landed and folded my wings. I couldn't fly anymore, but I could still pull myself along with my talons, gripping the small edges and ridges that ran along the top of the ship's bridge. I was there. Below me, transparent plastic. I could see the crew on the bridge. Taxon stared wildly up at me. With one desperate lunge, I propelled myself into the air. I had to fly full force to stay ahead of the onrushing windows of the bridge. Then, with one sharp talon, I pulled the trigger on the Dracon beam. Fry, you worms! Sorry, I couldn't imagine Tobias saying that. Fry, you worms! There was no recoil, not like a regular gun at all, but a beam of intense red light lanced out from me to the bridge. It burned a hole through the window, sliced through a fat taxon, and began slicing up control panels and instruments like a hot knife going through butter. I squeezed that trigger for as long as I could. At last, exhausted, I could do no more. The Dracon beam slipped from my talon and plunged toward the earth below. But I had done it. It was an incredible and terrible thing to see. The ship, big as a skyscraper, vast beyond belief, shuddered as though it had hit a speed bump. Still it rose, sharply upward into the sky, as if it were a whale breaching. It aimed for space, its natural home. But it was clear that it was no longer under control. It rolled suddenly onto its side. Boom! A ball of orange flame. The out-of-control ship had smashed recklessly into one of the helicopters. The chopper fell in ruins. The bug fighters and the blade ship scurried quickly out of the way, but too late. Crunch! Boom! One of the bug fighters had slammed into the side of the ship. The bug fighter was finished. The blade ship and the remaining bug fighter withdrew quickly. And then I saw the hole. A tear 100 feet long had been opened in the side of the truck ship. From the hole, the water of the lake gushed. It was a waterfall from the sky, millions of gallons hemorrhaging out. "Oh boy," I whispered. We were maybe 700 feet up over the forest now when I saw them. Cassie first, then Rachel and Marco together, and Jake. They fell, fully human, from the torn side of the ship. They plummeted, helpless, doomed, to the uprushing ground. No! I knew there was nothing I could do. I knew it. But still, I hurtled after them, hurtled with all my speed to them. Brain is not most cooperative this evening. Still, I hurtled after them, hurtled with all my speed to them as they fell, arms flailing, mouths open, and screams of terror. Chapter 26. Chapter 26. They fell, but as they fell, they began to change. Cassie was the first. Feathers sprouted from her skin. One of her morphs was an osprey, a distant cousin of the red tails. She fell, and as she fell, she became less and less of a human. Marco and Rachel had both previously morphed bald eagles. Bald eagles are huge birds, much bigger than red-tailed hawks. As I watched, long wings replaced their flailing arms. Jake had morphed a peregrine falcon. Peregrines are so fast they make red tails look like they're standing still. As I watched, a peregrine's beak grew from Jake's mouth. Not enough time. Not enough time. They would hit the ground before, shroop, Cassie opened her wings and skimmed above the treetops. Marco barely made it. He fell down into the forest, out of sight. I was sure he had been too late. But then, up from the trees, floated a bird with a 6-foot wingspan and a proud white head. Yes! I cried. In the sky overhead, the huge truck ship stopped climbing. It rolled again, onto its back this time, and plunged back to Earth. Man, that was way too close, I heard Marco yell. That does it. I have had it with this Animorph stuff. You're not safe yet, I told him. Look. With the truck ship out of the way and falling to Earth, the blade ship and the bug fighters came after us. Quick, into the trees, out of sight, I yelled. Like a well-trained fighter squadron, we swooped down into the forest, down below the tops of the trees, where the Yeerks could no longer see us. Boom! An explosion like a bomb going off. The truck ship had hit the ground. The concussion rolled us over like a tidal wave of air. I rocketed into a tree, but was able to avoid being hurt. Everyone okay? I yelled. One by one, they said yes. But the explosion had disturbed every animal in the forest. The birds had all either hidden or flown away during the earlier flight. The birds had all either hidden or flown away during the earlier fighting. Those few birds still left now took wing, startled. I saw her take off. The hawk. She was scared and wanted to run to the sky. But the sky was not a sanctuary for her. I don't know which ship fired the Dracon beam, whether it was one of the bug fighters or the blade ship. You see, they'd had a good long look at me, and she looked just like me. The Dracon beam sizzled. It burned off a wing, and she fell to Earth, never to fly again. Chapter 27. The Yeerk truck ship burned. What was left was eliminated by the Yeerks. No evidence was left behind. No proof that we could show to the world. But we had destroyed it, and a bug fighter as well, and we had gotten out alive. Most of us. It was a day later when I went to see Rachel again. It was like she was expecting me. "Hi, Tobias," she said. "Come on in. It's safe." I hopped through the window and fluttered over to the dresser. "How are you doing?" she asked. "I'm okay," I said. Hmm. She looked unsure of what to say next. "Look, Tobias, maybe this seems crazy, but Cassie and I were thinking, you know, that maybe we'd go back up to the lake, try and find her body, the hawk, and at least bury her." "No, that doesn't sound crazy, Rachel," I said softly. "Not crazy at all, just human." She looked keenly at me. "Well, we are human, all of us." "Yes." I knew I was human when I realized how sad I was that she was killed. See, a hawk wouldn't care. If if she had been my mate, I would have missed her, been disturbed, but sadness? I don't know. That's a human emotion. I know it seems strange, but I guess only a human would really care that a bird had died. "If you helped us look, maybe we could still find her body." "No, her body will be eaten by a raccoon or a wolf or another bird, maybe even another hawk. That's the way it is." "That's the way it is for wild animals, Tobias, not humans." "Yeah, I know. Hmm. That's how I know that you are wrong, Rachel. At least partly. I am a human, yes, but I am also a hawk. I'm a predator who kills for food, and I'm also a human being who grieves over death." She looked terribly sad. "She's very human, my friend Rachel." I went to the window. It was a beautiful day outside. The sun was bright. The cumulus clouds advertised the thermals that would carry me effortlessly to the sky. I flew. I am Tobias, a boy, a hawk, some strange mix of the two. You, you know now why I can't tell you my last name or where I live, but someday you may look up in the sky and see the silhouette of a large bird of prey, some large bird with a rending beak and sharp, tearing talons, some bird with vast wings outstretched to ride the thermals. Be happy for me and for all who fly free. The end. So we have read the first three Animorphs books, and I hope to continue reading them. I like having a set weekly reading time to look forward to, and it keeps me in the habit, in the routine. So yeah, I will look forward to trying the fourth book with you next week. And thank you so much for joining me so far.